Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. All victory to Sanatana Dharma, the eternal natural way. Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. It is absolutely wonderful seeing you all. I'm very happy that you can join me again this week. As people know, this is a weekly online live satsanga that we conduct every Monday at 7 p.m. This is conducted by the International Sanatana Dharma Society, which is the foremost movement upon the face of the earth to reintroduce Sanatana Dharma in the world today. And again, it is absolutely wonderful having you here. What we're going to be doing today is, as usual, as I often usually do, that is, I will be giving a talk commenting on several verses from the Vedic scriptures. And for those individuals who are especially new here, who for some reason or another you have found your way here, maybe you know very little about Sanatana Dharma, or maybe you are a follower, let's say, of an allied sister path to Sanatana Dharma, or just out of curiosity or just by accident. If you have happened to find yourself here, I especially welcome you, in addition to all those who have been with us for quite some time, in some cases many, many years. And let me just say, what you're going to be experiencing today is something that is indeed extremely traditional. This is how Sanatana Dharma traditionally is presented to an audience, and that is that you have an individual who is conversant with the Vedic scriptures, who will then comment upon the Vedic scriptures, either one or several verses, or even more than several verses. And after I give my talk for approximately 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes more or less, then after that we will open things up to questions and answers. And at that point, I would invite you to please feel free to ask any questions that you have, either about what we're going to be speaking about today, or just about any question you have about the Vedic tradition in general. But again, as always, please hold off your questions until I signal that it's time. Otherwise, I won't see your questions, and I do want to see as many of your questions as I can. So with that, we're going to be talking about three very interesting verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you wish to follow along, please feel free to look at the description of this video. If you look at the description, you'll see the three verses that are there, and you can feel free to follow along. And these verses are very interesting. This is very specifically Bhumi Devi. This is the earth goddess herself who is speaking, which is a truly wondrous thing, which is truly an amazing thing. So in this particular case, Prithu Maharaja, who was a very great king, a sagely king, a Rajarshi, an individual who was spiritually empowered, is having a conversation quite literally with the personification of the earth herself, with Mother Earth. So it is Mother Earth who is saying these words that I'm about to utter to you, and then again I will comment on them. And just to naturally break it up a little bit, I will do one verse at a time rather than doing all three verses. I think it will proceed a little bit better that way. So with that, let's proceed. And these verses are from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 18, and these are verses 3, 4, and 5. So with that, we will begin with the first verse, which is verse 3. To benefit all human society, not only in this life, but in the next, the great seers and sages have prescribed various yogas conducive to the prosperity of the people in general. So let's begin here. All three of these verses are what I call epistemological verses. So if you'll remember, at one point I explained my methodology, which is called categorical exegetical analysis. This is the way in which I unpack, reveal exactly what the verses of the Vedic scriptures are trying to explain to us. And again, as I've explained in the past, this is a methodology that is traditional, but basically I have just updated it with more academic terms in order to explain it to, let's say, more educated modern audience. But otherwise, this is a very traditional method. This is the method, really, of analyzing these verses. And we first begin by looking at the verse or verses in question, and if they are indeed philosophical, overtly philosophical in nature, which all verses are not. Not every verse is overtly philosophical, but when they are, the very first thing logically that we do is we put them in the proper category of what aspect of philosophy. So a verse or verses can be dealing with epistemology, that is, what is a valid means of acquiring knowledge, of knowledge acquisition. Or they can be dealing with ontology, or they can be dealing with aesthetics, or they can be dealing with political theory, or they can be dealing with metaphysics, or they can be dealing with, and you see how this goes on and on. So first, we put these in the proper category. These are epistemological verses. In other words, these are verses that are designed to explain to us, we who claim, as so many people do, we who claim that, oh, I want knowledge of truth. You see, unfortunately, and of course, being me, I am going to be very blunt about this, as I always am. This is a very easy thing for people to say. Indeed, this is something that multitudes and multitudes and multitudes of individuals will easily utter. Oh, I want truth. I want truth. However, to claim that I want truth, but then to take the subsequent action necessary with humility, with, number one, reforming our own characteristics such that we can open ourselves to truth, and then commencing an actual search for truth, that's rare. That's a rarity. And again, I am probably the only guru on the face of the earth today who is very honest about this. Truth is not for everyone. Truth is not for everyone. Why is this the case? Well, this is the case because of the fact that indeed we are an illusion. And even individuals who will, again, make that easy to state utterance, I want truth. Well, that's something that everyone can say. But then again, to do that which is necessary to acquire that truth, well, that's where the difficulty comes in. And then how close an individual will actually come to truth is in direct correspondence with that person's sincerity and ability. Sincerity and ability. Both are necessary. You see, you've also heard me say this as well. Sincerity is crucial. It's necessary, but it is not sufficient. You see, to be sincere, there is no search for truth unless you are sincere. You must begin with sincerity. But at the same time, sincerity alone will not reveal truth to you. Sincerity then coupled with doing that which is necessary, doing the hard work, the hard personal work that is necessary via that vehicle of sincerity to then acquire truth. That is, having ability as well as sincerity. That's more difficult for people. And when you have that perfect combination, that a person is sincere, but they also have ability. And what I mean by ability is, again, personally, that they have those qualities that are necessary to know truth. They have humility, they have wisdom, they have discipline, etc., etc. All of these internal qualities that are necessary, but then coupled with having the discipline to practice yoga, to practice actual spiritual practice in such a manner that we open ourselves to truth. That is indeed a rare thing. So thus, again, unlike the vast majority of fraudulent spiritual teachers in the world today, all of who will tell you that, oh, truth is there for everyone, every human being on earth can and will know truth, etc., etc. No, that's simply not the case. Long term, meaning many lifetimes, certainly everyone will indeed know truth. But as of right now, at this particular moment in history, truth is the exclusive domain of those individuals who have, again, both sincerity and ability. So, with this understanding, this is the nature of epistemology, is how do we acquire that truth? And if, again, we are sincere, and if we have that ability to pursue truth, these verses are explaining to us precisely how we do this. Now, the theme that we're going to see with these verses, including the first one that I just read to you, which I haven't even begun commenting on yet, but I will in a moment. The theme is this, that this is one of the epistemic mechanisms. This is indeed one of the ways in which we know truth, i.e., by learning from, listening to, and copying in our own lives, replicating in our own being the teachings of the sages. So now, all that being said, let's look at this very first verse. So let's go through this again. To benefit all humanity. Let's begin here. As you know, the way I analyze these verses, sometimes we've looked at literally one word. I don't know if we've done that on the live stream yet. But live and in person, when I've given talks here at our temple, I will stop sometimes with the first word and I will comment on that. But let's stop with this, to benefit all human society. So this is the first thing, is that the acquisition of spiritual attainment is something that is beneficial certainly to we as individuals. Oh, if you as a person want to know truth and devote your life to God and live a godly life, meaning a life of Dharma, oh, the benefits that you yourself will know are inconceivable. They are inconceivable. They can only be experienced, and they have been experienced by individuals who have indeed traversed this path, and they've seen their life change for the better. So the benefits to you as a person, those are absolutely guaranteed. But more than this, when truth is attained by you yourself, by other individuals, it benefits society as well. Why is that the case? Well, the more sages, the more spiritually evolved individuals that we have on the planet, everyone benefits. Our family benefits. Our friends benefit. Those who are around us and have our company benefit. When you make spiritual advancement, there is benefit to all society. So now, having said that, to benefit all human society, not only in this life, but in the next. In other words, what this is saying is both materially and spiritually. Both materially and spiritually. And this is a theme, another theme that you're going to see throughout these three verses. That the benefits of following the instructions of the sages, these three verses will explain again and again, are not only spiritual, but even material. Amazingly, even material. So, not only in this life, but in the next. So, to benefit all society, the great seers and sages have prescribed various yogas. Now, let's stop there. Let's stop there. What are yogas? What are yogas? And I'm not going to repeat things that I've said many, many times in the past. Of course, when we hear the word yoga, we have to rid ourselves of stereotypical Hollywood sort of ideas of what is meant by yoga. Beverly Hills form of yoga. That is yoga done by models in order to make yourself look more beautiful, but which in actuality as a practice is vapid in nature. This is not what we're talking about. Rather, we're talking about spiritual yoga. That's what this verse is talking about. So, in other words, means for acquiring truth, means for attaining self-realization and God-realization. That is what is meant by the term yogas here, and that is the term that's used in the Sanskrit. So, these means, these ways of knowing truth are revealed in one way. And what is that way? By the sages and by the seers. So, in other words, truth is not something, and the means for attaining truth are not something that come about due to any other means, due to invention, due to a bunch of people who had some good ideas, mental speculation, experimentation, etc., etc. It's very interesting. It's very unfortunate that even spiritual people have been tremendously, in many cases, contaminated by many of the more negative ideas and ideologies of modernity, to the point where even when it comes to trying to understand spirituality, people think that great sages of the past, quote unquote, invented spirituality the way Steve Jobs invented the iPhone. Not that he actually did, of course. We know that he was just a parasite. It was the people under him who actually invented the iPhone. But you get the idea. This is what many people think that spirituality is like. It's just kind of created, invented. Somebody came up with a good idea, experimented. They didn't kill themselves, so they figured, oh, I guess this works. Well, that is a very modern idea. That is not how truth is revealed. That's not how yoga was revealed. That's not how the Vedic scriptures were written, etc., etc. Rather, it is as a result of sages, i.e., individuals who perfected themselves spiritually and cognitively in such a way that they could reveal absolute and perfect truth through themselves as a via medium. And thus, what is given to us is quite literally perfect information. And that's something that's very difficult for, especially, again, modern individuals to accept, that there can even be such a thing as perfect information. And yet, that is exactly what these actually 3 verses are saying, and we'll see that more as we go through the other verses as well. The sages are perfect individuals who reveal perfect information. Now, of course, I always have to qualify this. What do I mean by perfect individuals? Do they never get a cold? No, they get a cold. No, they can be walking in a forest and they trip over a root on the ground and sprain their ankle. This is not what we mean by perfection. Rather, what we mean by perfection is perfect insight. Individuals who are morally incorruptible. And yes, there have been and there are individuals who are morally incorruptible. As hard as that is for some of us as skeptics to grasp, there are indeed such beings. And indeed, if the knowledge that we wish to know is knowledge that is going to be perfect, it can only be revealed by perfect beings. So, that being the case, this is what this verse is saying here. The great seers and sages have prescribed various yogas, and now what do these yogas do? Yogas that are conducive to the prosperity of the people in general. Conducive to the prosperity of the people. Of course, when we talk about prosperity, we're speaking of prosperity in the sense of Shri, in the sense of Lakshmi. That is, prosperity meaning abundance in all senses. Prosperity not merely meaning what, again, many people today think it means, that is having a lot of money in your bank account. No, it means abundance in every sense. It means abundance of health. It means abundance of wisdom. It means abundance of spiritual attainment. It means also material abundance, actually. It does indeed mean, actually, having a good job, living in a society that is truly a civilization that works in our interest, for our benefit, etc. So thus, this is why when we look back at, again, the very ancient Vedic civilizations, and there were many, just as an aside, it's interesting. If there were one Vedic civilization in the past, let's say that is one, Vedic kingdom that existed at one time in the past, that in itself would be truly astounding. But what is amazing is that when we talk about the Vedic civilizations of the past, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds, and not just one. But when we look at these Vedic civilizations that are described in the great epics, Mahabharata, Ramayana, in the Puranas, and so many other places, what we see are societies that functioned both spiritually and materially, in which, indeed, people had abundance in every way imaginable, where on the one hand, you had societies that were socially conducive, culturally conducive for individuals to practice yoga and meditation and study wisdom in peace and to make spiritual progress. But you also had civilizations, some of which the residents ate off of plates made of gold. and you had architecture, the grandeur of which engineers today, looking back at some of these Vedic temples of 2,000 years ago, literally cannot even figure out how they created them. So this is what we're talking about. Again, all abundance, both spiritual and material. Now let's go on to the second verse that we're going to look at, and this is Canto 4, Chapter 18, verse 4. One who follows the principles and instructions enjoined by the great sages of the past can utilize these instructions for practical purposes. Such a person can very easily enjoy life and pleasures. So again, very interesting. See, there's a reason why I picked these three verses. There's always a reason why I pick the verses that I do. As you can imagine, I never do anything by accident. Every single thing that I do is well thought out. The reason why I picked these three verses is because, indeed, of this interesting illustration that we're being given, where, again, too many people have this misconception, this stereotype, that, oh, what it means to be a yogi, what it means to be a spiritual person, what it means to follow Sanatana Dharma is indeed that you are someone who is so focused on spirituality to the point where anything material just kind of dissolves around us and becomes meaningless and etc. That is not the case. Again, Vedic society is a society that encourages both material and spiritual prosperity. So with this verse especially, we're seeing this. So let's go through this second verse. So first, again, the epistemological element. That is, how is it that we actually acquire true knowledge? It begins in this way. One who follows the principles. This is how you gain knowledge. One who follows the principles and instructions enjoined by the great sages of the past. So the great Rishis, the great Acharyas, the great Gurus, the great truly, truly liberated beings of the past. Okay? And what does that person do? That person can utilize these instructions for practical purposes. In other words, following these instructions of the sages, we can use these instructions in a very practical way. Again, I am maybe one of the few Vedic gurus alive today who, again, this is one thing that I stress and stress and stress, is that Vedic spirituality is practical. It's not pie in the sky. Again, it's not an escapism, as so many people with a very small amount of knowledge try to claim. They'll claim that, oh, Vedic spirituality, becoming a yogi, it's a type of escapism. No, it's not. No, it is as practical as can be. So this is the reason why, for example, if you actually study the Vedic tradition, you will see that there were indeed great sages of the past who, of course, many of them spoke directly about spirituality and philosophy. That was the foundation of everything that they did. But they also wrote about mathematics. They also wrote about city planning. They also wrote about all the sciences, from biology to astronomy and everything else in between. They wrote about medicine, what is called Ayurveda. They wrote about, interestingly, martial arts. We have great sages who wrote about how to do archery. There is a scripture known as Dhanurveda, the Veda of archery, that was revealed by a great sage, and on and on and on. So what is my point? Sanatana Dharma is indeed a path that is practical. Again, spirituality is everything. That is the foundation, certainly. But at the same time, we are meant to grow and to have abundance and just have a wonderful life in every way, both spiritually and materially. And again, this verse is confirming this fact. And then finally, such a person, i.e., a person who follows the instructions of the sages, can very easily enjoy life and pleasures. So such a person can very easily enjoy life and pleasures. This is the goal, is indeed to enjoy spiritually, not selfishly, not in a hedonistic sort of way, not in a debased sort of way, but to enjoy sattvically, to enjoy all the natural wonders of this world. What does that mean? That means delicious food, delicious, wonderful, in my case, spicy. I love spicy. Not everyone does. But delicious vegetarian foods that are healthy and organic, that are offered to God and that are then consumed as prasada in such a manner that we have health. We are meant to enjoy the beauty of this world. We are meant to go out into nature and see the mountain ranges and see the rivers and see the forests and the trees and the flowers and the animals, see other people and their beauty. We're meant to see the beauty of architecture and of art, etc., etc. We are indeed meant to enjoy this world, but again, with God in the center, with perspective, understanding that all that is good has God as its source, and thus allowing the beauty of this world, the good things and the enjoyments of this world to actually bring us closer to God. So, again, this is what this verse is saying, is that, again, continuing with the epistemological theme, we truly learn truth from the sages, number one. Number two, what we do learn from the sages is meant to help us both spiritually and materially. With that, let's go on to the very last verse. A foolish person, a foolish person who manufactures his own ways and means through mental speculation and does not recognize the authority of the sages, who lay down unimpeachable directions, is simply unsuccessful again and again in his attempts. Oh, so this is a little bit of a compassionate warning. Compassionate warning, because the Vedic scriptures tend to be very positive, but once in a while there'll be just a little bit of a warning, but it's meant to be very compassionate. So let's go through this, and it's explaining what happens to the individual who, again, does not have the wisdom to follow the instructions of sages. So, number one, a foolish person. It describes the person very bluntly. One thing of many that is nice about the Vedic scriptures is that they're straightforward. The Vedic scriptures are straightforward. They don't mince words. This is one way in which you know that someone is presenting truth to you versus a lie, is that they are straightforward. They are blunt. They are honest. They don't mince words. They tell you the truth, whether it makes them popular or not. And why does such an individual, a true guru, a true sage, why do they communicate in this way? Because the Vedic scriptures do. And here we are, a foolish person. So it's making it very clear. This is not the path to follow, what is now being spoken of. A foolish person does what? Who manufactures via concoction, via speculation, that is occurring via the vehicle of false ego. All right? So a foolish person who manufactures his own ways and means through mental speculation, and who does not recognize the authority of the sages, and now it has a qualification of these sages, who lay down unimpeachable directions. In other words, the directions, the teachings, the instructions that these sages give, they are unimpeachable. They are perfect. There's that P word again. They are perfect because they do not come about as a result of mental speculation. Rather, they come about, these instructions, as a result of direct, non-mediated perception of the divine. This is how the sages know truth. They don't sit around and have debates with each other and kind of discuss things and, well, this kind of makes sense. Well, it makes sense to me. And then they kind of write something down. No. Rather, the way that the sages acquire truth is that they empty themselves. That's the technique. They don't speculate. They don't have emotion involved. They don't have their own self-interest involved. Rather, they have the opposite. They empty themselves of all that which is illusion, and they open themselves to divine grace. And in this way, truth is revealed to these sages, and those sages in turn teach us. So this is the direct route in which we know perfect truth. Even though we are imperfect beings, we have perfect sages revealing perfect truth perfectly. Very good. And what happens to the foolish person who indeed tries to acquire truth not via the directions of the sages, but by their own concoctions, their own mental speculations, that person is simply unsuccessful again and again in his attempts. Again and again, that person is unsuccessful. And what does that mean? In every way, again, both materially and spiritually. And the attempts that human beings try to make in order to have a good life, the good life, in this world, both materially and spiritually, what ends up happening is that they fall very far short from perfection. And as a result, we have what we have now in the Kali Yuga. See, the Kali Yuga is a manifestation of indeed this very last clause. If we want to understand what is the nature of the Kali Yuga, it is the societal manifestation of the words of this last clause. And again, it is the foolish person simply being simply unsuccessful again and again in his attempts. Thus, we have thousands of religious sects, all of who just kind of debate against each other, war against each other, none of which, or very few of which, have the ability to actually help people advance spiritually. So thus, people spiritually are dissatisfied. Then materially speaking, what do we have? We have all kinds of speculative philosophers, some atheists, some agnostics, some claiming to be spiritual, but all of their ideas come from their own illusioned mind rather than directly from God. And thus, and more politicians. We have all sorts of political individuals, whether ideologues, whether actual politicians running for office, etc., all of whom have wreaked havoc upon the earth. So thus, what do we see? That as a result of all sorts of so-called leaders, both spiritual and secular, all of whom are working in accordance with mental speculation rather than revealed divine truth, they have wreaked havoc upon the world, and the result is what we now call the Kali Yuga. So, 3 very interesting verses. Again, talking about epistemology, how is it that we do indeed acquire truth? And again, that is through the sages. And the sages meaning, yes, not just the sages of the past, but the sages of today as well. Because one thing that is a blessing is that regardless of what the era is, even deep within the Kali Yuga, even 100,000 years from now, when the Kali Yuga will actually be worse and blacker than it is now, there will always be some sages, even if very few. So it is by following the instructions of the sages that we know truth. That's the first theme. Second theme of these 3 verses is that we are meant, Vedic society helps us to prosper both spiritually and materially. And the two are not mutually exclusive in any way. Very good. So, all that being said, let us stop here. I will stop here with my talk, and I will signal to everyone that now if you wish to ask some questions, now is the time to do so. Thank you very much for listening to my pravachana, to my discourse on the Vedic scriptures. But with that, please feel free to ask any sincere questions that you may have, either about these verses or, again, any aspect really of Vedic spirituality. I'll answer this question quickly. It actually would require a much more in-depth answer to really go very deeply, but unfortunately too in-depth for this sort of a live stream. It would actually require speaking face-to-face. But this is the question: how do I arm myself with the Narayana Kavacham? Is it by chanting the Kavacham mantra or by daily surrender and meditation? Is it wise to try to use the Kavacham mantra without initiation? Thank you. Very good. So let me just explain, first of all, what is meant by this. In a previous talk, I mentioned the importance of Narayana Kavacham, that is having quite literally the armor of God. If we as individuals wish to fight against evil, to fight against adharma, the opposite of dharma in this world, there is something that is called Narayana Kavacham. This is mentioned in several of the Vedic scriptures, including Srimad Bhagavatam and several other places. And what this literally means is the armor of God. First of all, it is indeed quite literally an armor of God. It is not something physical, but it is something that comes about due to the grace of God, such that there is an invisible armor around the devotee, and specifically the Dharma warrior devotee, in such a way that he is defended, he is protected, and he can indeed fight against evil. As far as how this actually comes about, certainly it begins with reciting the Narayana mantra, the Om Namo Narayanaya. This is the beginning stage of how we acquire this Narayana Kavacham. Certainly you wish to begin chanting, even if you're not initiated. You can't wait till you're actually initiated. You should begin doing this now. Eventually, however, initiation into that mantra is required. And then finally, there is indeed an actual ritual that takes place in which the guru invests the Narayana Kavacham upon the student. And I've done this myself with several of my students. And that is the process. That is the process. But certainly begin. Don't wait until that happens. Begin now by first reciting the Om Namo Narayanaya mantra. So I hope that was helpful in explaining that. This is a kind of in-house question, but I'll answer this. Namaste, Sri Acharya-ji. Could you make the academic papers that you have written available for us to read? I don't see them on Dharma Central. Yes, indeed. In fact, they were available at one time, at least 100 articles that I wrote, many of which were extremely academic. I literally wrote them in 800 and 900 level graduate courses on various aspects of Vedic spirituality. They were available on Dharma Central, but they haven't been for a few years. We are in the midst of redoing Dharma Central dramatically. In fact, we have several of our people working on this. And one thing that we do want to do is once Dharma Central is redone and a much better website than it is now, which it's already a fantastic website technically, we're going to make those articles and many more available again. So please be patient. Don't ask me when that's going to happen. That's all dependent upon our IT people. But let me tell you, we have a truly expert team. These are not people who are doing this as a hobby. These are professionals who are disciples of mine, and this is what they do for a living, is work on world-class websites. So Dharma Central is going to be redone very soon. So when that happens, the articles will be available. Let me answer this question, actually. This is a unique question I've never been asked. And this is Adam who is asking this. Acharya-ji, in what ways should Sanatana Dharma challenge Christianity in America? Interesting question. I would not personally state the question in that way, because it's not really that we wish to challenge Christianity. In fact, positively speaking, what we seek to do is, rather than challenge X thing, we wish to present in a positive way what is Sanatana Dharma in a way that it can benefit people. But that being the case, you know that, of course, I'm also very, very open about this, that, of course, there are ideologies that are inherently anti-dharmic, which indeed we have to face. We have to confront ideologically, philosophically, via polemic discourse, etc. That being the case, I wouldn't really use the word Christianity, rather Abrahamism. Because it is indeed the case that Christianity is, roughly America is roughly 90% Christian, more or less. So America is indeed primarily a Christian country. But at the same time, we don't see our task, practically speaking, as challenging Christianity itself, but rather educating Christians in such a way that they themselves will begin to embrace the more dharmic elements that are naturally there in the teachings of Jesus, while at the same time rejecting the, let's say, Abrahamic poison that is also there. So in other words, Christianity really, truthfully, can be reformed in such a way that it once again, as in the times of Jesus himself, that it starts to become dharmic again. So again, we don't have to see ourselves in necessarily an adversarial sort of position vis-a-vis Christianity, but rather we want to educate those individual Christians who are intelligent, who are wise, who are open-minded enough, who are philosophical enough to accept the fact that, yes, they can follow Jesus, but at the same time, they need to understand Jesus, the Dharma master, not Jesus as as he is presented in, let's say, mainstream Christianity. So I would state it more in that way. As far as in what ways should we do this? Again, positively, by teaching people. And if we ourselves are not in the position to teach, because not everyone can give lectures, or do things like that, then at the very least, in whatever capacity you find yourself, in whatever way you can, just educating people, even if that means all you can do is take several of our videos and post them somewhere where people will see them and, again, be educated. In whatever way that you can help to get the message of Sanatana Dharma out to the general public, that is how we will change the world. That is how we will begin to awaken Christians to Dharma. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. Here's a very practical question. Sri Acharya, what are the most important Upanishads to read? Well, certainly there are several that I can mention. Upanishads, I'm sure many people have heard. Isha Upanishad is a very, very important one. It's sometimes called Isha, sometimes Ishavasya. It's the same Upanishad, it just has two different names. That's certainly one that's important. Another one is Narayana Upanishad. You'll remember that not long ago we did a live stream in which I spoke about several verses from there. Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad is another important one. The previous two that I mentioned are rather short. Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad is the opposite. It's actually pretty big. It's a larger book form. Kena Upanishad, Kata Upanishad, Shvetashvatara Upanishad is also another very important Upanishad as well, because of the fact that it is very unabashedly personalistic in nature. And again, there are several others. I would start with those. And truthfully, if you have a chance, read them all. Because they are all translated, all 108. Some beyond the 108 are not translated, but certainly the 108 most important Upanishads are translated, certainly into English. So read them all if you can, but start with the ones that I mentioned especially. And please bear with me. There are so many questions and so many good ones. It's interesting. Of course, I'm looking for good questions, but there are so many good questions, in fact, that sometimes I even have to skip good questions, unfortunately. So if you've asked a question and I'm not answering it, it's not that your question is necessarily not good. It's just that there are so many that due to time, I can only pick what I consider to be the best of the best that I am seeing. All right, here is a very practical question. How does one become initiated? Very good. So this is asked by Rick. And yes, let me explain the process very quickly. Before I do that, however, let me explain both to you, Rick, and then also to others as well, that the International Sanatana Dharma Society has actually published a very nice book. It's a small book. It's not massive, but it's a very good book on initiation. It is called Taking Refuge in Dharma, the ISDS Initiation Guide. If you go to dharmacentral.com, if you go to our book section in the menu, you'll see that book available. If you are truly interested in initiation, I would suggest that you get this small book. Again, it's small, it's not very costly, but it explains the entire process. It explains why a person should even be initiated, what are the qualifications of a guru, the qualifications of a disciple, etc. But it also explains literally just the actual technical process by which a person takes initiation. But at the same time, very briefly, let me explain the process as occurs in the International Sanatana Dharma Society. Again, for myself, I am the Acharya, I am the guru of the ISDS, so I, of course, am the person who gives initiation. First of all, it's important to understand what is the nature of initiation. The reason why a person takes initiation is severalfold. First of all, there is an actual empowerment that takes place, and it is real. Individuals who have taken initiation from me have attested to this. It is something that is quite real, where a person becomes empowered to help me and to help the Vedic tradition to restore Dharma in this world. That's the first thing that happens, that there is a spiritual empowerment such that the person in their own spiritual practice can practice even better, but also that, again, they can help to restore Dharma in the world. Another reason why initiation is important is because what we were talking about previously. While an individual can recite and meditate upon a sacred mantra, a revealed mantra on their own, certainly they'll make spiritual progress. But when you receive the mantra, then via transcendental sound vibration through the guru, and you are initiated in the mantra, now you are especially empowered to recite and meditate upon the mantra in such a way that your progress will be much faster and much deeper. The other reason why a person takes initiation from a guru is to receive personal instruction from the guru. In other words, for any guru, unless the person is a fraud and they claim, they have 1 million disciples, someone like a Sai Baba or someone like that, they have 1 million disciples. And, needless to say, those disciples can't have personal instruction and guidance from the guru. When a guru has that many disciples, it just cannot be the case. But rather, when a person takes initiation from a guru, which is indeed a rare thing, a real guru doesn't give initiation to just anyone. And I don't. I give initiation to people only once in a while when they absolutely prove themselves to be sincere. But what that then means is that I will guide them personally in both their philosophical understanding, but also how they're progressing in their own spiritual life, and this is, again, a very personal sort of thing. It's a one-on-one relationship that is otherwise not available. So again, there are many reasons for taking initiation. A person, in order to take initiation, they must be following all the rules and regulations that are necessary to be a serious follower of Sanatana Dharma. That is, they must be a strict vegetarian, not use intoxicants, etc. We talked about these in a previous live stream, I believe, called The Four Regulative Principles. So if you want to look at that as a refresher, that explains some of the principles that a person has to follow. A person has to do daily sadhana upon initiation, etc. For initiation, I prefer, as does every legitimate guru, I prefer doing an initiation one-on-one, that is literally face-to-face. That is, you come here to Omaha and take initiation. In rare cases, I have given initiation to people via Skype for whom it was literally impossible for them to come to America. They lived in other nations and they just could not come here for one reason or another. And upon initiation, the person will receive a spiritual name. They receive a vow to recite the Om Namo Narayanaya mantra, etc. That is, in the briefest of nutshells, what initiation is all about. And the person takes vows. They take vows to have fidelity to the Guru, and again, to help the Guru with the Guru's mission to teach Dharma to the world. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that explained a little bit. I'll answer this question, actually. In fact, I believe you asked this question maybe last time, and I saw it after the live stream was over. I didn't have a chance to answer it, so I will now. And this is Chad. Dear Sri Acharyaji, could you please expound on the concept of Kundalini from a traditional Vedic perspective as opposed to New Age? Absolutely, absolutely. This is something that people have asked me about quite a bit for decades and decades. And there is indeed a world of difference between the New Age, modern, especially American commercial, let's say, understanding of Kundalini and chakras for that matter. What a lot of New Age people like to call chakras rather than chakras. The CH is a hard consonant. Yes, there's a world of difference between the New Age understanding versus the actual yogic understanding. Kundalini awakening is indeed something that is legitimate. It is something that's real. It is something that is discussed in several of the Upanishads, getting back to the Upanishads. You see, this is something that I wish to write about in the future, that I've mentioned to people again and again, but again, I need to write an actual book about this. Yoga is traced to the Upanishads. The Upanishads are the textbooks of yoga, and that includes Bhagavad Gita, which is Gita Upanishad. Bhagavad Gita also is considered to be an Upanishad, but it is going back to the Upanishads that we find legitimate yoga, authentic yoga. This includes Kundalini as well. The proper understanding of Kundalini is that, and I'm going to just state this in this way, but then I'll clarify. Kundalini is not spiritual. It is important to understand this. Not using the word spiritual to understand spiritual meaning of the nature of pure consciousness. Kundalini has nothing to do with consciousness. Rather, Kundalini chakras, the 72,000 nadis or currents of energy that exist within the Sukshma Sharira, that is the subtle body, have to do precisely with that. That is the subtle body. That is that form that is in between the physical body and the Atmic self. So thus, when we speak about Kundalini, we're not talking about something of the nature of consciousness, and this is where the New Age people always get it wrong. Kundalini is relegated to Sukshma Sharira, that is, to the subtle body, the astral body, the causal body, whatever you wish to call it, whatever name. See, as I explained in one previous video, very in depth, protecting yourself from evil entities. Look at that video and I explain how there are three forms, three quote-unquote bodies that are recognized in traditional yoga, in all of Sanatana Dharma. That is, there is the physical body, there is the astral body that is energetic in nature, and then finally there is spiritual form, that is consciousness itself. Kundalini, chakras, etc. have to do with the second of these, that is, much subtler than the physical body, but not of the nature of consciousness. Now, all this being said, one could, very easily, to be devil's advocate, ask, well, then, if Kundalini is not purely spiritual, why is it discussed in the Upanishads? Because many things are discussed in the Upanishads that are not purely spiritual. For that matter, asanas, how literally to have a physically healthy body. The body is not spiritual. The body is not consciousness. The idea of yoga is to use every single tool that we have in order to perfect ourselves, to have clarity of mind such that we then can indeed approach true consciousness, pure consciousness. So thus, in the same way that we do asanas, that we do pranayama, and we use the physical body in order to do this, that is yoga. In the same way, indeed, we can develop the subtler elements, the subtler powers, the subtler energies that are there in the Sukshma Sharira in such a way that we have psychic health. And thus, having achieved this perfection, this siddhi, this perfection, even more so now, we have the ability to engage in pure yoga in order to have self-realization and God consciousness. That is the Vedic approach, the yogic approach, the Upanishadic approach to Kundalini versus the New Age approach, which I'm not even going to begin to explain all the misconceptions. I know them all, but I'm not even going to begin to explain all the misconceptions that New Age people have about Kundalini. Again, everything from, oh yes, Kundalini is itself of the nature of consciousness, which is not the case, to, oh yes, a type of sort of concocted New Age sort of therapy. Oh yes, you're having some sort of problem. Oh, this one chakra has not been activated or it's been aggravated, and etc., etc. And no, none of this has to do with actual Kundalini practice as is explained in the Upanishads and practiced by actual yogis. There's a world of difference between the two. And I could go much more in depth into this, but I won't. Maybe this will be the last question that I'll take, just due to time, because we only have 2 minutes. And this is Brittany who is asking this. Namaste Acharyaji, I'm interested in learning more about Ayurveda. Do you have any authentic sources to learn from? Is Dr. David Frawley a good place to start? Absolutely. Dr. David Frawley, Sri Vamadeva Shastri, he is a friend of mine. We've been colleagues for, we've known each other for roughly 22 years, maybe a little bit more. He is one of the best people, certainly in the Western world, to study Ayurveda with. He, of course, you may or may not know, if you go to vedanet.com, which I believe is his website, he has an online course that you can do in the privacy of your own home and doing it at your own pace. That is truly excellent. I have several disciples who have studied that course. I've known about that course for decades now, and it's a very good course. His books are also quite good, etc. So I would certainly begin with Dr. David Frawley. There are other resources that are out there as well. There's Vasant Lad, Dr. Vasant Lad, who is in Albuquerque, who has the Ayurveda Institute. That's also another good place to study, either online or going there. Of course, it would require, if you wanted to go there, you'd have to go to Albuquerque, but I believe there are online courses through that institute as well. But Ayurveda is something that is truly, truly wonderful. It is an entire science in and of itself. For those people who don't, because again, I have to keep in mind there are people who are maybe brand new to Sanatana Dharma, and you may not even know what the word Ayurveda means. Ayurveda, Veda means knowledge. Ayur is life. So this is the science of life. This is Vedic medicine. So you see, when I say that we have indeed, as a Vedic people, we have a civilization, I'm not joking. We literally have our own medicinal system. For that matter, we have our own language, Sanskrit. What we are presenting is not just a religious path, but quite literally a civilization with every single element that is necessary to a civilization. So Ayurveda is indeed the natural medicinal system of Sanatana Dharma. So with that, it is 8 o'clock my time. We have been together for an hour. I am so sorry to those for whom I could not get to their questions. This always happens. There are always so many more questions than I can actually get to. I need to make one comment, because as I'm saying all this, I see one thing here. Someone is recommending Robert Svoboda. Very sadly, I need to disagree. Stay away from Svoboda. He is not a good source of information for anything whatsoever Vedic or Ayurvedic. Svoboda is not a good person in any way. Do not read his books. Stay away from his teachings. Rather, stick to Vamadev Shastri and those individuals who teach Sanatana Dharma in a sattvic sort of way. I'm sorry, I just had to make that comment, because that is incorrect. I know all about Mr. Svoboda, and he is not a good source whatsoever on anything Vedic. So again, with that, I thank you all for being here. Just a few reminders. If you have not subscribed to our channel yet, please do so. This Dharma Nation channel is unlike any channel on YouTube, spiritual or not spiritual, actually, both. It is unlike any other channel that you will encounter for this reason, as you just saw that I just did. We tell the truth, and regardless of anything, we tell the truth. We don't care about popularity. We care indeed about truth. So please subscribe when you can. Also, please visit dharmacentral.com when you have a chance. We have an email list that's there, which if you would like, you are more than welcome to join our email list. And it's completely free of charge. And once in a blue moon, we'll just send you an announcement about something that the ISDS is doing. The other thing I would like to say is, if you have been inspired by my teachings for some time and you wish to support me and the International Sanatana Dharma Society. When I say support me, I don't mean personally. I don't make a penny from the ISDS whatsoever. But I mean, if you want to support my teaching mission, and if you want to support the International Sanatana Dharma Society as a movement, then when you do indeed go to dharmacentral.com, please look on the menu and look up membership. Please consider becoming a monthly tithing member of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. When you do so, you help us with all the many projects that we are doing, and this live stream is the tip of the iceberg. We have many very real projects that we are working on as a 501c3, as a nonprofit movement. Please consider becoming a member, and in that way, in addition to helping us, also you'll be helping yourself by aligning yourself with what is the most important spiritual movement upon the face of the earth today, the International Sanatana Dharma Society. And if you do become a member, what's nice is, among the other benefits, is there is a once-a-month Q&A session exclusively for members. No one else sees this. It's not available anywhere. This is exclusively for members, in which I don't even give a talk. It's 1 hour of just from beginning to end, me answering questions of our members. So you'll have access to that if you become a member. So with that, I thank you all again very much for being here. I ask you that in every way you take very good care of yourselves, that you apply these teachings in your life in every way that you can, both philosophically but practically as well. That you practice Sanatana Dharma via meditation, yoga, puja, etc. And that you join us again next Monday. For the foreseeable future, until the internet goes down, we will be continuing to do this every Monday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I hope that you can be here again next Monday and every Monday. With that, Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. And with that, namaste. Until next time, please take care.